freaking first cut. Golly.
Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman, and this is your mega pod for the world of golf. Kyle Porter, Patrick McDonald are both here. Patrick, is this the most historic pod we've ever recorded? Are we there yet?
I think we need KP's AirPods to kind of fudge up once or twice, and it'll definitely be up there. The world of golf, that could be the new name for this entity that everyone's getting involved with. Maybe time to TM that or something.
I will go grab the LLC and domain. Kyle Porter, KP, have you slept? And what is more, your hours of sleep last night or your screen time from like 3 p.m. Eastern yesterday till now?
Screen time for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Rick Run Golf would also be a good name for the new entity.
Okay, yeah, I'm available for purchase.
Are you?
I don't. Sure.
I just like. I think it's hard to contextualize and have perspective on things when you're in the middle of them. I think yesterday was the wildest day that we will ever experience in these jobs, right? Like what's what's going to top that?
No, I think that's pretty fair because you have to step outside golf and you have to step outside how much we know and how much we care about it. And anytime something gets into like mainstream media, I think, okay, we've gotten past golf, we've gotten past sport in most cases. For our sport or any sport to have even a break-off league is rare and historic. For then to have 2 years of vitriol and lawsuits and everything else, Patrick, and then the reconnection of said break-off, just in those terms, it's literally probably a once in a lifetime thing.
I think the only thing that could potentially top it is if Tiger Woods starts his own league with Donald Trump as the commissioner. I think that's the only thing that could possibly top it. And even at that point, it might just be on par with this current plan.
It's not that far off from it's not that crazy anymore.
I know. They're both players in this game. You gotta consider it.
What about like Rory shooting 59 to win the Masters? Would that top it? Probably not, right?
Because that won't be. I got because I am kind of a big deal. I had interview requests from Singapore, from all over, like
New Zealand.
Yes, if
I think
59, I'm not getting interview requests from Singapore.
No, it's true. It's the mother-in-law measurement, right? Is your mother-in-law texting you about it? My mother-in-law did not, but I had enough people that are friends who don't care, who don't even follow golf, that texted me. They're like, "Hey, what's the deal? And I'm like, brother, we don't have enough time here, and we have
lost the deal. We have lost it.
Yeah, like I've got a lot of other things to get to first, but it was I was Patrick and I were chatting this morning about like I don't even know where to begin. You know, it's hard to like wrap your arms around what went down yesterday and what it means for the next 50 years.
Okay, so let's do our best here. So I've got obviously a lot of notes. I've got an outline. We'll take this wherever we need to go. We did an emergency podcast yesterday when this news broke, and we really knew nothing. And I think the temperature was quite high. The players were not happy. Since then, we had a player meeting in which Jay Monahan addressed the players at the RBC Canadian Open. We had a Jay Monahan presser in which he spoke to members of the media. We had Jay Monahan then meeting with the PAC, the Player Advisory Committee, which is a smaller subset of the players that kind of help the decision-making process. We had Bryson DeChambeau go on CNN. We had Rory McIlroy this morning. If you're watching this live, that's Wednesday morning, break his silence and provide his first presser. So that's kind of all the stuff we need to tackle. Let's start with the player meeting. Patrick, we waited. We did not do this podcast yesterday because we wanted to kind of have that side of things. Apparently, Jay Monahan for about an hour addressed a pretty hot room of players, rank and file, wondering how we got to where we got so quickly.
Yeah, and I think Johnson Wagner of Golf Channel he called in on someone's phone who was on speakerphone and listened to the entire thing. I know, Rick, you tweeted out that the negative positive split was 90-10. Standing ovations when people asked for Jay Monahan's job, essentially, his head on a platter. And apparently the star of the show was Maverick McNeely. Who would have thought that a son of a very successful businessman who went to Stanford was the smartest guy in the room? He just released something on Instagram. I haven't gotten to read it yet.
Yeah, I want to read it.
I do as well. And then, but you got to remember this field at the Canadian Open's a lot of rank and file guys. It's a lot of guys who already felt somewhat ostracized from the new schedule that was going to roll out in 2024. You put this on top of that as well. And yeah, I think it's a lot of knee-jerk reaction and a lot of people pissed off at the moment. Rightfully so in some cases. I think these guys, from one point of view, they kind of got
why rightfully so. Like why I was talking to one person who was there yesterday about like why should the mules, the 100 and 105th guys, why should they be upset? What should they be upset about?
What I was going to say, from one point of view, they kind of got the golden ticket with these guys leaving and them kind of getting bumped up. I mean, we saw it last year in the FedEx Cup playoffs. Guys who finished like 130 got into Memphis when normally they wouldn't have. So they kind of caught a break there. But from the same time, the guy who they've kind of backed, Jay Monahan, even Rory said it, was extremely hypocritical with what he did and his actions. And I understand these guys aren't making a lot of money for the PGA Tour. Fans aren't coming out there to see a Ryan Armour or a James Hahn or whoever you want to pick on at the moment. They're looking for Rory McIlroy, John Rahm, and Scotty Scheffler, but they're part of the membership. And I think it's hard not to feel a little bit slighted if you're one of them.
Yeah, I think what you said at the end is the key point for me. Is what is happening here is a shift of power away from players who either had it or had the illusion of it, right? A member-run organization, everybody's voice matters. Rory said that before, of like, hey, I'm one of 200 guys or whatever the numbers are. And what is happening is a shift of power away from whoever used to, Ryan Armour and Johnson Wagner, I'm just saying names that were on Twitter last night, to executives in suits that run the league. And whether you think that's a good thing or not, I think like if I have to choose in a vacuum whether athletes or executives should run a business, this is probably a bad example because Monahan's not been good, but I think I'm choosing executives, right? Like just in a vacuum, like take this particular situation out of it. But anytime you remove power, even a small amount of power from people, there's going to be frustration, pushback, anger. And I think that's a little bit of what we're seeing right now with some of those rank and file guys on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, this is a coup against the players, essentially, in my opinion, right? Because whether they should have the power or not, they had it and they're not going to have it anymore. But
yeah.
once you had it, like the toothpaste is out of the tube, right? Like it's hard to remove that power from those guys. Now,
and real quick, Rick, that's why yesterday felt so succession-ish, right? Because Monahan played all his cards and was like, not like, and I think that gets it why players feel betrayed, because he all along was like, I work for you, I work for you, I work for you, you work for me. Correct. At the end, right? And that's like, there's a world in which, one, that was the only play, and two, that was the best play for a lot of these guys. But it does feel like a massive power play by him to sort of consolidate power into his own hands. He's the CEO of this for-profit organization. And that has to feel pretty weird for somebody who you thought worked for you.
Yeah. And I think also at the same time, Jay's taken a ton of heat about this. I've lessened my stance on the Jay Monahan hate a little bit.
Is he dropped in the fraud rankings?
Right now, I'm on top because I was supposed to be at U.S. Junior Media Day. I thought I could make it and play 18 today. Not happening.
Fraud alert.
Yeah. But I've lessened my stance. I've lessened my stance on Jay because at the time, if he doesn't kind of rally the troops here, there's nothing to defend. Like all these guys go.
Mm-hmm.
And so to his point, like to his stance.
Well, do they though?
I think a lot more go. Yeah. Do you not?
I think there's a difference between rallying the troops and doing a complete 180 after what you said for the last 2 years, right? You don't have to evoke the 9/11 families.
Yes.
Oh,
you can
agree
rally
with that.
the troops in another way.
Yes. The rallying was not great in that respect, but I think the hypocrisy in 180 was almost needed. You needed to rally the troops to protect what you had. And then you're like, all right, cool. We got it. We spent all the capital that we can. Oh crap. We're going to, take on a lot of water here if we don't do something quick. And I got to do this deal, with the guys I galvanized the whole troops against. So I'm kind of, Jay's taking a lot of heat, rightfully so, but I think down the road, people will be like, this was a great deal.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like, is it a good thing? I was talking to somebody at the tour about this last night. Is it a good thing for the Saudis to have their hands in your company, in your organization? I think it'd be interesting to talk. Sorry, Rick. Go ahead.
I don't know. Ask Vince McMahon. Right?
That's what I was going to say. I'd love to talk to somebody from like Newcastle or Aston Martin or whatever else they have money in and say like, is it just money? Is it power? Is it influence? Like how has this sort of played out? Listen, Patrick, I think Jay Monahan has bad foresight, and I'm not saying that my foresight would be any better, but man, you get paid a lot of money to have good foresight when you're in that position. And maybe that's the fault of maybe he shouldn't have been in that position, because that is your job, is to have foresight, to have vision, to see at least a little bit into the future. And what it feels like in retrospect is that I said this yesterday, he was just blown about by whatever was happening in the moment. I think he thought early on, Rick, that he could, I think he had the confidence that he could stand up to Saudi Arabia, to MBS, to Yasser, and say the buck stops here and I'm putting my foot down. And he did not have that. He might have never had that, and he definitely didn't have it at the end.
Yeah. So he also didn't have a lot of answers for the players yesterday about what this looks like. So what's the pitch, right? Because if you're Jay, this is going to look really bad. The response is going to be very negative from your players. So he must feel like he has something to sell them. So the pitch, Patrick, can only be money.
Mm-hmm.
Now
we got money and we took a competitor off the board.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. PGA Tour is about a $1.5 billion a year.
Yeah.
That's revenue, top line, doesn't take into account anything else. 1.5 billion. LIV has already blown $2 billion into a 2-year startup with 0 revenue streams. So I imagine that they could value something like the PGA Tour at a lot higher rate. So Is this a situation where they just say, hey, we'll put $20 billion into this in the next couple of years, and Jay Monahan can go to John Rahm and say, hey, John, sorry about all that, bud. Apologies. You're now on Team Callaway, and you are going to get a $40 million a year contract like a star quarterback, right? Like that's the only pitch. Nothing else. That's the only pitch. And then you have enough money where these guys say, I forgive you.
Yeah. And my question to that is really, Rory McIlroy was asked about this, wondering if the loyal PGA Tour members like himself should get paid for foregoing the LIV money. And my question
for staying,
correct. My question would be, if they weren't okay with Saudi Arabian money then, are they going to be okay with Saudi Arabian money now? Because it's the same money. It's just kind of filtered through the PGA Tour.
I think that is a really, I think it's a really important question. But like, what do you do? Do you just quit playing golf? Just play the majors? I think there's a difference, Patrick, and it may be small. I mean, listen, don't come to me for objective Rory McIlroy takes, but there's a difference between running to the Saudi Arabians to the PIF and them running to you, right? Like Phil ran over there and said and wrote the operating agreement. He went to them essentially, right? And Rory, when he was talking today, it's he used the word resigned. That's more so them coming to him or to the tour, right? And I don't know if that distinction matters, but I think it probably does.
We have that clip. Run it, Josh.
The one thing I would say is, again, whether you like it or not, the PIF and the Saudis want to spend money in the game of golf. It is they want to do this, and they weren't going to stop. So how can the thing for me, and this is this one thing that I've always thought about, how can we get that money into the game but use it the right way? And I think that's what this ultimately will do. Hopefully. I mean, that's my hope.
Yeah, one in the front right over here.
Just over here. You've said a couple of times now, maybe 2 or 3 times, if I remove myself from it and kind of trying to kind of forecast a bit further down the line. But is that a hint that there are bits of you that are still uncomfortable with, you're a football watcher, you've seen the reaction to Newcastle United's takeover over the last year and the Saudi kind of moves in soccer and other sports.
Yeah.
Is there a bit of you that's still uncomfortable with just how cozy Saudi Arabia and their money is now in golf? Like, a lot of people would see that it controls a hell of a lot of golf.
I've come to terms with it. I see what happened in other sports. I see what's happened in other businesses. And honestly, I've just resigned myself to the fact that this is, this is what's going to happen. Like, it's very hard to keep up with people that have more money than anyone else. And again, if they want to put that money into the game of golf, then why don't we partner with them and make sure that it's done in the right way? And that's sort of where my head's at.
I think the other thing here, Rick, is Rory also didn't make this decision. Right. I think players are now, you could blame him for saying like he agrees with it and he's in on it. He said that to me last summer. And I pulled the quotes from an interview we did before the Open last year. So you can put that on him, I guess. But this deal was done by like 3 people. Right. And so any player who receives money from it is not really culpable in the same way that Brooks and DJ and Bryson and Phil and Patrick Reed and all those guys are, or at least not in the exact same way. So I think that's also like a distinction that's worth sort of noting as we talk about all this.
I've resigned myself to it. I've come to terms with it. I want to make sure that the money gets spent in the right way, Patrick, which I guess who is going to decide what the right way is, right? We've learned a little bit more about what the structure of this new entity could look like, the for-profit side of things, where the PGA Tour will have a majority of the board members, which in theory gives them control over some of the bigger business decisions. But I mean, we've seen how a group of 8 guys or, whatever, like, control is fluid.
Do we have the full board number? Because it was Hurley, Dunn, Jay, Yasser, and I think they said they'd announce the rest later. Is that correct?
Rory,
Tiger. No. Yeah, that is what we know so far.
So they've got 3 of 4 hypothetically right now. They got.
They'll probably be what, 8 or 9, right? Like,
yeah, yeah. Where that money is going to be spent, I think is. I'm interested to see what the schedule and what I mean, there's still so much we don't know. Like we don't know if LIV Golf is going to exist. We don't know if this is going to be a Champions League type of deal. The first year where, what if it's like top 20 from LIV, then top 50 PGA Tour, top 20 from the DP World Tour. So sorry, I got hedges getting blown out behind me.
That's okay.
But it's just tough to kind of know where the money is going to go, ideally into the big players' pockets. But outside that, it's tough to say.
Rick, what's your take on standing up to where the money comes from as a player or an organization? Because that was a big talking point this time last year, right?
Yeah, for sure. It is definitely okay. I'm on the record, and I hate governments in sport, like in general.
Yeah, it's not good.
I don't think the Olympics should exist, right?
Ooh,
because like I'm like out on government funded sport. Like I think history has shown it has done far more bad than good. Okay, so I'm out on that in general. Now, if I'm a professional golfer, I do think it's not that different, right? Like it is different, but it's not that different of Phil going to get $200 million directly from MBS or the PIF funding a for-profit entity that is a partner with the PGA Tour that eventually gets money to Phil. Like it's not that different, but I suppose if you are an elite golfer, do you have a choice? Is just playing the majors a realistic, like I like you could retire, I guess. If you really felt strongly about it, you could retire and never play again.
Well, the difference is Phil did have a choice.
Sure. But I'm saying where the money comes from, it's still the same money.
Oh yeah. No, I don't think anybody disagrees with that. So the giving or the influx of the money is the same, but the receiving of it is different.
I don't besmirch Uber drivers that, the PIF owns whatever percentage of Uber and they're getting paid by Uber, right? Like that would be silly for me to do that.
Do you besmirch the Uber board that approved the investment from the PIF?
More than the yes, sure.
So I think in that scenario, the players are the Uber driver. The PGA Tour players are the Uber drivers, and Jay Monahan is the Uber board, right?
Yeah, in that scenario, yes.
But also, like Phil, Brooks, DJ, they're also the Uber board,
right?
Because they went and did that,
right?
So listen, like, in a vacuum, do I want PIF money in golf? No. Like that, no, it's not great. It's just not something that I think anybody in the game wants, but I think Rory's right. Like if this is an inevitability, like if they're just going to keep pouring money into golf until somebody breaks down and lets them in as an investor, then I don't know. Maybe you do just like take a principled stance forever, but then like that sucks for the next 20 years because they're not going to go away. And I think the tour Monahan found himself in a position where you want to be tied up in court. Do you even want to have a business anymore? Tied up in court for the next 10 years. You have discovery that you don't. I mean, the whole thing is just such a mess. It's such a mess. And they could have avoided all of it by just doing what they did on Tuesday 5 years ago.
Yes. We will continue this conversation and try to figure out what the new thing looks like and everything else going on in the World of Golf LLC. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
The Portland Thorns fly east for their battle with Orlando Pride. Sunday on CBS Sports Network.
And we're back. You know, it's a situation, guys, where the tour players don't really have a representative, right? They don't have someone who fights their battles for them. It requires all of them banding together at some point and figuring it out and making decisions. But in other sports, Patrick, there are unions, right? The players union in Major League Baseball gets to be the bad guy and gets to negotiate on behalf of all of the players. That, in theory, I guess could be Jay Monahan, but your commissioner and your players union guy, like there's, and we've talked about this before, the commissioner of any sports league has too many interests from too many different places to get it all right all the time, right? And there is not an entity that is supportive 100% of the players' interests.
I think silently you could, have groups of players try to boycott. I don't think that's going to happen. But that would be kind of the only way I think the PGA Tour players could unionize or have a strike. Go ahead.
Which is crazy, Patrick, because, okay, we've seen strikes in other sports. We've seen it. And I feel like, for the most part, the public perception is generally in favor of the players. For the most part, there's obviously, different ways that things go down, but I feel like, and I agree, like the players should strike. They should not play this week. Like if they really want to keep control, if they want that, if they want to go this other route, that's fine. But if they want to, they should actually strike and not play. But I feel like if they did that in golf, I don't know if public perception would be in their favor.
Yeah. And we were talking about rank and file guys. If, Rory McIlroy seems, pretty at peace, at terms, resigned to the fact of, this is the world we live in. Yeah, some people might have problems with the money, but at the end of the day, the PGA Tour needed an influx of capital. It couldn't have kept on running these designated events and whatnot, and the lawsuits draining them. So it makes a lot of sense financially. But if a lot of these rank and file guys who do feel a bit kind of irked at the moment, ostracized, there's so many other people like them out in the world. Golfers, right? Like you could replace the FedEx Cup rank 60 to the end of it with Korn Ferry Tour guys who won't have problems with the money or whoever it may be. So unless it's like the top end players who are going to strike, who I don't think they will, because they're going to have a couple extra zeros most likely to their checks down the line. I think they'll start to understand that long term they're going to be making more money. So I really don't think there's anything they can do if they're against the money and the investment.
Can we talk about LIV? Like it's
yes. So yeah, the structure of this is going to be interesting, right? So seemingly there's no reason for LIV to exist anymore because the PIF. So we have to be really clear here. And Rory did a good job of this. Michael Kim has done a good job of this on Twitter. This is a merger and a deal with the Public Investment Fund, the PIF, the PIF. This is not a merger with LIV Golf. PIF just happens to fund LIV Golf League. So now that PIF has their goal, which is financial and power interest of a global golf league, there's no reason for LIV to exist, especially because it's a money burn.
Yeah, no kidding. Rick, do you think this was Yasser's play all along? I was tweeting about this last night about it feels like everybody kind of got gamed a little bit, but Yasser almost like didn't at all. Like it feels like he kind of played everybody, but that's an easy thing to say in retrospect. Do you think this was their play all along?
I think that it was one of the potential plays, right? I think when you have, if you're this disruptor, right? You're this $1 trillion disruptor, and you look at golf, which is ripe for disruption, right? We learned that over and over again. You start this process, and there's a lot of different end games. It is that Tiger says, "I'll go to LIV." Great. Yeah. Now we have the marquee World Tour, and we'll run it, and we'll put our people and all that stuff, right? That's one possibility. Another possibility is, we have LIV in its current state, but we were able to sell the teams for $2 billion a piece, and now we are like making money on this, and we are getting influence with other multinational or other governments, right? I mean, you have to remember the PIF makes money a lot of different ways. It's not just on golf. If they get some crown prince or some whatever, if this strikes an oil deal from a pro-am, they are happy as clams, right? So that's one potential outcome. Another potential outcome.
It's a potential name for the new organization.
Exactly. Yeah.
Happy as clams.
Happy as clams. And when the team comes out of the clams, the range clams, I'm all in. One of the potential other outcomes is this, right? Where you got your merger and you got your influence, right? So I think it's really difficult to say that this was the master plan and they got it figured out, because I think there were a lot of different outcomes that range from okay to good to great.
The sacrificial clams, perhaps.
There you go.
Yeah, that's a good take. I think that along the way, though, I think it became when you're spending $900 million and making like $2,500, like that's
tough.
That's not good. And so I think at some point along the way, I agree with you that maybe it wasn't the plan from the beginning, but I think at some point over the last 9 months, they kind of looked at the corner they were putting the tour in and looked at their future with LIV, which is just, I mean, it's arduous to try to build all this, and it takes a long time. They're in it to diversify, not 20 years from now, but like they want to diversify their assets right now and get into stuff that they can like blow out over the next 20 years, not build up over the next 20 years. And so I just think at some point over the last 9 months, they looked at it and this became like to them the obvious solution, because it's what they wanted at the beginning and then they didn't get it. So they're like, whatever, we'll go do our own thing and we'll see what comes of it. And then again, at some point, and I would love for Yasser to like talk openly about what that point was. He won't, and that'll never come out. But I would be fascinated to hear him say like, this was the moment where this became like the end goal.
Yeah. So let's continue to succession game this out, Patrick, and what this could possibly look like, right? Are the elevated events going to continue to exist? Is everything an elevated event? Are LIV events an elevated event? The schedule that we've
LIV events are gone, right?
Okay. My personal opinion is there probably won't be a LIV schedule next year. Those guys will get somehow reinstated. I think all the purses are going up. And I don't know. Will there be? I mean, we've spent a year talking about elevated versus non-elevated events and how that's going to influence the schedule and all this stuff. And now I'm not sure any of that is going to come to fruition.
Well, it will for 2024, right? I don't know. Who knows?
I mean, I generally agree that like things happen very slowly and it's like trying to turn a battleship and it just happens slow. But like, I don't know, man. Things seem to be happening fast in golf.
Everyone seems to think this deal pretty much put the axe in LIV Golf itself. the league. I'm not sure if I'm quite there. I think it could stick around, and I think it's going to be a Champions League type deal where, look, the PGA Tour had 8 designated events for next year set up. I believe LIV Golf had 8 tournaments of their own and courses already set up. I believe you're going to be seeing 16 events based on top 24 from LIV, top 50, top 60 in the FedEx Cup or whatever from the PGA Tour, some world ranking points thrown in there as well, DP World Tour top 20, and that's going to be the juice of it. And then separately, you're going to have normal events like the John Deere Classic. LIV will do whatever they need to do. That's where I'm at personally.
Wait, what do you mean by LIV will do whatever they need to do?
They'll still have their 4 or 5 other events.
So could they kind of split the globe, KP, where it is kind of a global tour, a huge injection of cash into a similar-ish PGA Tour schedule and 8 to 16 LIV golf events that are globally based that encompass Asian Tour, DP World Tour, like that side of things?
I mean, they could do a lot of different things, right? Which I think is what's interesting about yesterday because there was no details. I mean, Yasser and it feels like Yasser, Ed Hurley, Jimmy Dunn, and Jay Monahan were like, hey, let's start a company. It'd be like us 3 saying, let's start a company, and then going on CNBC and saying, hey, we started a company.
And just dealing with the details and the flow back later.
Yeah.
And then you start looking around, you're like, what are we going to do? Right? Like, that's what it felt like. I think there was more to it than that, but it just felt like there was no real outline of what they're actually going to do. Like, I don't think I was on the call with Monahan last night, and I talked to one player this morning who was in the meeting, and there was like no details on the call last night and no details in the player meeting. And I don't think it's because he doesn't want to disclose details. I think it's because there aren't any that exist.
I mean, even in the CNBC, I mean, it was just very much just like, we've agreed that we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that so 2 things that nobody's really talking about. One, people are talking about them, but not prominently. One is this going to get blocked legally? Patrick, that might be more your forte than mine. I'm way out over my skis talking about the Department of Justice, but could this legally get blocked? And 2, I talked to somebody, a different player yesterday, who said, like, listen, the policy board has to vote on, I don't know what they have to vote on. They have to vote on something here. That's made up of 5 executives and 5 players. I don't remember. Do you remember the players, Rick? Webb, Rory, Cantlay.
I can find out.
Malnati,
Peter Malnati. Yeah. So do they have the votes?
And Charlie Hoffman.
What a pool. I think you could get one player to flip in that easily.
Rory? Or just whoever?
Monahan and Cantlay are pretty close knit as well. I know that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, I was talking to my wife about this last night, and she was like, when something feels this inevitable, it just works out. Like, there's not going to be a player blockage. There's not going to be a Department of Justice blockage. And I think I agree with that. But those are definitely hurdles that they'll have to navigate over the next however many months.
Yeah. The DOJ wise, I appreciate your confidence in me, Kyle, but I would say I'm also not a great person to ask their ability to block this. But I will say kind of the quickness and the speed of which this deal came about. I do think, and a lot of people have floated it around, and I totally agree, that the discovery process in the LIV PGA Tour case was a big, big reason why.
Agreed. For sure. I don't like the whole thing. So the PGA Tour is going to continue to exist as a 501c6. Yet this new for-profit entity is going to house all of its assets. Why? right? Like why does the 501c6 need to exist? When
Taxes, baby.
I know, but can you do that? Can I have a charitable organization underneath a for-profit umbrella and just move all the assets? Like, can I do that? If I'm enough like accountant, can I do that?
Yeah, I mean, I tell the tax man every year that I donate X amount. Sometimes it's a little fudged. We're talking about morals here. Sometimes I'm not on the moral high ground when it comes to my taxes. Please delete this clip, Josh. And yeah, I think if you're smart enough, there's obviously some really good tax people out there where.
So.
Well, but okay, you're talking about like Patrick McDonald's income versus like a $1 billion Saudi Arabian and
corporations have even more tunnels to go through.
But this is what players keep saying, Rick, is they keep saying like somebody wrote that. Michael Kim might have wrote this. I don't know how this is going to work, but apparently it's going to work. And I feel like everybody keeps saying that, and you're like, well, somebody has to know how it's going to work.
My point being that like there is nothing stopping a for-profit company from making all the donations they want, whether they are write-offs or not. They can do that, right? There's nothing stopping it. You might not get as big of a benefit, but there's a lot stopping a 501c6 from being a sports league in the sense that we know sports leagues of like contracts and guaranteed money, because like it all has to be performance based. That's why they have these stupid Wyndham Rewards top 10, Comcast Business, PIP, like, because that's the way they have to funnel. You don't have to do that if it's a for-profit. You just cut everybody its salary or whatever, right? You cut them a Christmas bonus. It doesn't matter. That doesn't stop you from making these donations. It just seems like it doesn't make any sense.
No, that's right. I think my two biggest questions right now, beyond like what events are going to be played, are one, how the European Tour, PGA Tour, and LIV are going to like interact with one another, right? If LIV even still exists. And then two, how the players are going to be affiliated with each of those entities, like with like inside of them. And I don't think Monahan and Yasser know like what the answers to those questions are. And again, it feels like, we'll figure all that out later on. And you're like, well, we got 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I need to run through a couple of other items here. Are teams coming to the PGA Tour?
Oh, that's a good question. I believe so. Yeah. I think they will.
For sure. Right, Kyle?
But
we were okay. Anybody, like, I've gotten a lot of stuff wrong on LIV. This is one thing that we were saying last year, like the teams thing as a business model freaking works. If you get Callaway involved, if you get Nike involved, we pull the clips, Josh. We said that last year, and now they have the opportunity to do so. Although one thing that's interesting is the PIF has first right of refusal for any future investments into whatever the new organization is called, which I think is like, that's like ceding a lot of control to an entity that I'm not sure you want to cede a lot of control and trust to.
Interesting. I did not know that part, but you're right. I've said there are two things about LIV that I liked: teams and being available on YouTube and showing everything. Now they've kind of screwed up both of those things because they let buddies play with one another and they screwed up the draft and all that stuff. But in theory, if teams run like F1 runs teams, could be sick.
Yeah. I'm in. But God, we could have done this 4 years ago, Rick.
I know.
How many teams would you guys do though?
Oh, you would need, here's what I think, because I'm in charge now. 12 teams of 12, 144. Okay. Anybody who is not on a team, free agent, they can still make money by playing in the tournament. But if you're on a team, you have like a contract. Now, not all of them are going to play every single week. You just take, whatever top 4 score. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But imagine like, okay, we got to sign Ricky Fowler, his contract. Oh, we're going to trade X, Y. John Rahm's demanding a trade from
Hell yeah.
Callaway.
No, it'd be great.
I think
It's
you
like
got because there's too many events and because not everybody plays all the events. I think you have to have like pretty sizable teams. Like F1 gets away with 10 teams of 2 because everyone races in every single event. But you couldn't. I think you got to have like 12 of 12.
That makes sense. Yeah. Or do they do the Champions League thing? Like
what's the explain? Do that again. Explain that to me again. Tell me like I'm 5.
I'm not convinced LIV is completely dead in the water. I'm probably wrong here, but I'm envisioning like the top guys from LIV, the top guys from the DP World Tour, and the top guys from the PGA Tour meet like 12 times a year, something like that. And that's what this new thing is going to be. Outside of those 12 events, you'll have the 4 majors, and then everyone else will have their own individual tour events. So like the John Deere Classic will be for the PGA Tour guys. Because one thing that I thought was interesting from the press release was they said that LIV members can reapply if they wish to.
Mm-hmm.
So based on that, I'm not completely convinced it's dead. But
I just don't know if they can like the LIV brand is not. It's like if you're the new organization, can you afford to keep the like? What does the LIV brand have going for it? Is that what you want to like tether your future to?
No, it's definitely a fair point. They have Brooks Koepka going for it pretty much. But if those guys, I mean, they could kill LIV if they just want to reapply to the PGA Tour, I guess.
Or you could rebrand it. I don't know. There's I mean, that's the thing, guys. Like there's a million different ways this could go. I think I'm very, I don't know if I'm optimistic, but I'm very intrigued by how it does go, because I think that you have a lot more options on the table that are exciting than you did this time 6 months ago, or even when LIV started. Because now you have all the players, all the money, and basically you can do anything with the format because you've got all these different organizations underneath the big organization. So knowing like executives in corporate America, they'll massively screw that up and it'll be terrible. But at least there's some like optimism about what it could look like.
I'm available for consultation about a team format and not screwing it up this time. We have to talk about Bryson doing the media rounds. And
oh my gosh.
The not so beefy one went on CNN to not talk politics, and it covered a lot. Bryson continues his "I'm the smartest guy in the room."
You got any LIV takes?
Oh,
huh? My wife said I thought LIV didn't exist anymore.
Well, she might be looking into the future.
Okay, picture the Champions League thing.
Bryson did a little apologizing for the Saudis and what happened during 9/11. He was a good soldier for MBS, and I don't know, man. Bryson's a weird guy.
Yeah, I'll take that one. I just don't think Bryson, or I mean, I don't know. Bryson probably shouldn't be doing interviews on
right.
CNN.
What is the positive for Bryson going on? So he's not on both Fox News and CNN in the last year. What is the benefit of Bryson going on a political news show and saying, I'm not going to talk about the politics?
You know what was the most disgusting part of that interview?
Pat Monahan.
That was funny. Was Bryson saying, we could never repay the 9/11 victims for what they lost? And I think I know like what he was trying to say, but dude, like nobody was asking you that.
Yeah.
Right? Like nobody was asking you to repay anybody anything. Like I think so many of these guys think that, oh, well, if you just throw some money at it, like everything's good. Right? Like they just think that about anything. And it's like, yeah, you don't get it. Like you don't understand what life is like about. If that's yours, it's really like, it's kind of a sad and bleak outlook. And that was sort of the vibe that I got from him within that interview.
Yeah, he kind of took a stance of like, well, it's been 20 years. And, and then he was asked like, well, there's been things that have happened more recently with like Jamal Khashoggi and just like other human rights atrocities. And he basically said, quote, "It's unfortunate what has happened." And he would go on to say that they're trying to make the world better.
And he said everybody makes mistakes, I think was the quote.
Makes mistakes.
Everybody has those days.
He didn't
Everybody
say
makes it.
Did he say that?
No, I was quoting a song.
Oh, okay. He does. He did say everybody makes mistakes. All right. Well, we're 50 minutes into this. We've covered a lot. We will show quickly the bets and the one and done stuff. Is there anything additional that we need to quickly touch on about all of this?
I Googled how does the PGA Tour commissioner get fired this morning.
And what was the answer?
Well, I was looking through the player handbook, and I'm not deep enough into it yet because that was one of the talking points on Tuesday was, oh, Jay's not going to survive this. And it's like, I think Jay just made himself like CEO of golf.
Yeah, Jay might not survive this, but he's got a new job.
Yeah. And so
jobs
and the board are all his buddies.
Right. And so it's like, well, I just, again, like, I don't know if they know what the details are. So I definitely don't know, but can you just make a new company that houses the old company? And does that part even have to be approved?
No, that doesn't. But if you don't get, the three of us could make a company and say, okay, we're going to house the PGA Tour, but the PGA Tour doesn't have to do business with us, and the PGA Tour doesn't have to do business with this new entity that Jay Monahan is the CEO of. He is just betting that because he's the bridge to this, and he can get enough guys on his side that he can get them to agree to that. But if the players don't agree to this new entity that he is the CEO of floats into outer space,
but also
with a lot of money.
Of course.
With a lot of, well, yeah. But like if he gets, let's say the players today are like, okay, Monahan's out, and they execute all the things necessary, which I don't think can happen, because I think they have to have the votes from the policy board, which is half non-players, and they're not going to get those votes, right? Like I don't know. I need to look into it more. But everybody kept saying like Jay's gone. And it's like, even if he is, I think he like failed up. I think it was a true Lane Kiffin situation.
I mean, I don't know what Jay's master plan was, but it might work out for Jay.
Yeah. The only other thing that I had was there's a way to look at this, and we sort of touched on this a little bit yesterday, but there's a way to look at this in such that Jay Monahan got the public investment fund to pay the PGA Tour for LIV to go away, which is kind of sick, right? Like it's far more complex than that. But it's kind of crazy that the public investment fund theoretically might have just paid the PGA Tour for LIV to not exist anymore, which is pretty wild. And I think, I don't know. That was just one thing I was thinking about on Tuesday.
Since the last time we potted, a lot has changed. So I imagine that is going to continue to happen. There is going to continue to be, it's like trying to drink out of a fire hose at this point with the amount of information that's coming out. And oh, by the way, the US Open is next week, where everyone will be on site and be asking all the questions that we may or may not have the answers to. So
rub it in, Rick.
I meant everyone as in like LIV and the PGA Tour. You just took that personally, which might be a reflection of yourself. You might want to talk to somebody about that.
Wow.
It's okay. Listen, I am here. I am a pro therapy guy.
All right. Let's get to the bets.
Okay, we will do that, but first we have to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
Someone hunted a hunter.
This is the work of a serial killer.
Pickett thinks he can do a cop's job.
Drop your weapon! Stand down!
No one trusts a lone man in the wild.
Joe Pickett Season 2 is now streaming on Paramount Plus. Use promo code Pickett for 1 month free trial. Credit card required. Terms apply.
All right, so we're going to do the bets in the one and done. We're going to run through this very, very quickly. We also had this set up where we were going to go last night, so I think we also have Greg's picks in here as well. So show the board, please, Josh. Thank you very much. Just go very quickly here. Matchups, Adrian Moronk over Keith Mitchell. That's mine. Greg went with Corey Connors over Cam Young. Patrick went with Lee Hodges over Harry Hall. Kyle, you went with Ludwig Aberg over Sam Bennett, a couple of freshly minted professionals.
Yeah, I love Ludwig. Ryder Cup, European Ryder Cup or Ludwig Aberg?
Well, who knows? Maybe those guys are from LIV are coming back now.
Who I got asked that on a radio spot this morning. Like, is everybody back in for the Ryder Cup?
Not this year, because it's not until the end of the year.
That's true.
Who knows?
Well, it's the ultimate who can say.
Yeah,
that is true. This whole situation is.
Yeah. Right. There might be something out next week that says actually in the fall you can reapply, or who knows. Finishing positions. I went with Dylan Wu top 40, Carson Young for Greg top 20. KP went with Corey Connors, the Canadian, to finish inside the top 10. And Patrick, you went with Aaron Rye at the longer side of the odds, 3-1 to finish inside the top 20.
Yeah, kind of just threw these picks together last minute, and I'm hoping a couple of them will stick.
Perfect. No better way to do it. The outrights. 2 outrights from each of us. I went with Sam Burns and Eric Cole, 14-1 and 50-1. Greg went with Rosies, Justin Rose and Shane Lowry, 18 and 20-1. Patrick went with Tommy Fleetwood and Sahith, 22 and 33. KP, you also went with Tommy Fleetwood at 22-1, and you sprinkled in a little bit of Matt Fitzpatrick at 12.
Yeah, I went with 2 guys who are just completely ignoring this entire situation and working on their games in Canada. And Fleetwood's been playing pretty good recently. Fitzpatrick won RBC. He might get the RBC Slam. Who knows?
That's actually pretty cool. Yeah, Fleetwood did not attend the player meeting and was like, I'm just going to go putt. And Patrick's presser, 1 o'clock.
Which is sweet.
1 o'clock presser just no-showed and was out on the golf course. Like, if you think I'm the first person who's going to talk about this, you are outside your freaking mind. So both of them find a reprieve on the golf course.
I respect. I mean, if I'm a player, isn't there a part of Rory that's like, I'm so glad this is starting to be over?
Probably. I mean, it's like, yeah, I'm going to look like a fool for a bit, but man, the finish line of me having to answer these questions every single week feels like I can see it now.
Yeah.
You guys see this Messi deal that he got?
What's the numbers?
So he's getting a compensation package that includes a share of Apple's revenue generated by MLS season pass and a share of Adidas profits from his MLS arrival.
Yeah. Equity, baby.
Yeah. So he turned down the Saudi deal, right?
Yeah.
To take this deal with Inter Miami, and they are giving him, say that again. So equity, a percentage of, so what they're like their league pass. They're like,
a share of Apple's revenue generated by their MLS season pass and a share of Adidas profits as well.
So this is what Inter Miami gets from Apple from League Pass. They're going to give a percentage of that to Messi and also of the Adidas. That's so sick.
Yeah.
Equity. Good
way to do it. Hit me with the best bets. Thank you. Couple of Ludwig Abergs. I went with top 40 at -140. Kyle doubled down with his matchup over Sam Bennett. Greg took Shea Rivet, Ches Reavie, top 40 +140. And Patrick, you have gone back to negative Nancy and found a player to miss the cut.
Hey, we should bounce. Big J is on
All
Golf
right.
Channel.
Cool. Run the one and done. Here are the picks for one and done. On the screen, Mark, Corey Connors, Kyle, and fans, and Sia, and Greg, and Kyle Porter, Shane Lowry. I went with Matt Fitzpatrick. Patrick went with Tommy Fleetwood. Jay Monahan is on live right now. This has been The First Cut. We'll catch you next time.